Good morning and welcome to Daily Red Devil. Lots to get into on the show this morning, but before we do that, please do me a small favour. Smash a like on today's video. Let's try and see 500 likes on this episode. And if this is your first time watching today, subscribe to the channel, bottom right-hand corner. Now, there's going to be lots and lots of talk today about Alejandro Garnacho, with apparently Garnacho's agent agreeing to a move to Napoli. Now, just to be very, very clear, just because Garnacho's agreed to move, that doesn't mean that he will actually move. Obviously, Manchester United will still need to agree a fee with Napoli. So it's all good and well, Garnacho's agent meeting with Napoli, agreeing personal terms, agreeing wages and all the rest of it. It's kind of irrelevant. Because if Man United aren't happy with the fee, then he's not going to be going anywhere. But we will be talking about that. I want you to let me know how you feel. How does it make you feel to know that Manchester United have become a selling club? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Are you happy about this? Are you sad about this? I will give you my opinion in a couple of minutes' time, but I think it's going to surprise some of you because, over the last 24 hours, I've seen people absolutely devastated about this possibility of Garnacho leaving. And I've got a slightly different opinion on it, but we'll talk about that in a minute. We're also going to be talking about Bryan and Mbeumo, who could potentially be signing for Manchester United in the summer. A little bit of an update on Anthony. We've got some injury news for you as well. So lots to get into. Make sure you have your say on all things in the comment section. Now, I'm going to start off with some positivity, and I think this is positivity. So this is coming out from the Manchester Evening News this morning, that apparently Luke Shaw is set to return from injury in the next 2 weeks. I would say this is probably why we're not going to sign a left wing back in January. Luke Shaw's coming back at the perfect time. He's going to be back, I think it's next week, I think. That's what's being reported. So, I mean, if Luke Shaw stays fit, great. I like Luke Shaw. I think he's a good footballer, but he's just injured 99% of the time. It's like, how can you rely on somebody who's never available? But I do think we are stronger with Luke Shaw. Yes, he needs to leave the club. Yes, he's not good enough anymore from a fitness perspective. But from a quality perspective, I think he always has been a decent footballer. Sorry, everybody. Like, when you look at his injury record, it's absolutely appalling. 47 games he missed in 24-25. 50 games he missed in 23-24. Like, yeah, his injury record is an absolute disgrace, to be honest. He does now only have 2 years left on his contract, though. So 2 years from now, he won't be our problem anymore, which is somewhat positivity. But let's just hope that Luke Shaw comes back from injury. Let's hope that he stays fit. Let's hope that he gets some game time, and let's hope that he contributes. That's all we can really hope for. But I think that's a positivity for us this morning. And the other bit of injury news I had for you was on Mason Mount. So Ruben Amorim was asked yesterday about when Mason Mount will be back. And he said that he'll be back very soon, apparently, which is good. So I know some people are like, oh, I don't care. I'm sick of Luke Shaw. I'm sick of Mason Mount. Get rid of them. But even if you are one of those people who think like that, the best thing that can happen is that these two players come back, they get fit, they perform, and then maybe we can move them on. I think Mason Mount's not going anywhere because we've only just signed him, haven't we, last season? But I think Luke Shaw, maybe in the summer, if he has a really good end to the season and he doesn't get injured, maybe someone goes in for him. Maybe even someone like Saudi or something. I don't know. But obviously if he's injured, no one's going to buy him. So this is positive. It's better to have more players than it is to have less. And obviously if Luke Shaw and Mason Mount come back, it then means that we probably can let some players go. Maybe Harry Amas gets to go out on loan to the Championship. Maybe Toby Collier goes out on loan, maybe. It just gives us more options and more flexibility to do some more interesting things in the transfer window. So I'm happy about that. But let me know how you feel about all of that. Let's see who's in the chat this morning. Welcome to everybody who has just joined. I hope everyone is doing good. Somebody in the chat saying, is there any news on Vlahovic? Vlahovic has gone very, very quiet. At the moment, the only team who are really, really linked to Vlahovic is Arsenal. So, yeah, I think Vlahovic to Manchester United is not going to happen, to be honest. I know some of you really rate Vlahovic. I was a little bit unsure about Vlahovic. I think the biggest thing for me is, for anybody who's unaware, Vlahovic is earning 350 grand a week at Juventus, which is the same as Casemiro. He's earning more than Rashford. I don't think he's a 350 grand a week striker, to be honest. I think someone like a Haaland is a 350 grand a week striker. I can't really think maybe like an Mbappe. You know, players of Vinicius Junior, people of those quality. And for me, Vlahovic is not a 350 grand a week player. So although he's a decent option, I don't think he's worth the money. Like if you look at his stats for this season, he's got in Serie A, he's got 7 goals in 16 games. What's that? A goal every 2.5 games in Serie A. He has got 4 goals in 5 in the Champions League, though, to be fair, which is decent. That's a pretty good return. He's a good player. I'm just not convinced that he's worth 350 grand a week. And I just think that, you know, we should learn from our mistakes. We shouldn't be paying anybody really above 200 grand a week, I don't think. At the moment. I think we're 15th in the Premier League at the moment. And we finished 8th in the Premier League last season. You know, there shouldn't be a single player in our squad earning above 200 grand a week. You don't reward people for finishing 8th by giving them 350 grand a week. And I mean, we did that in the summer, didn't we? We finished 8th last season and then we reward Bruno with a 300 grand a week contract. I mean, that didn't sit very well with me, to be honest. And I think we have to learn from those mistakes. We have to learn from the fact that at the moment we have a team of overpaid, underperforming players. We've got the right manager. But other than that, I think a lot of these players are currently not performing to the level that they're being paid to. Obviously, we played better against Arsenal and we played better against Liverpool. But as Ruben Amorim says, those games don't really matter. If we don't go and beat Southampton tonight convincingly, I mean, it's completely irrelevant then, isn't it? Like, we need to see these players give 150% or 100%, whatever you want to call it, against the lesser teams. You know, we need to go and beat Southampton. We need to go and beat Brighton. We need to start climbing up the table a bit. Because, I mean, even if we beat Southampton tonight, right? I think the highest we can get to, let's have a look. So at the moment, we're 15th. If we beat Southampton tonight, we'll go up to 12th. I mean, it's not really much of a jump, is it? And then if we were to beat Brighton on the weekend, we would go up to either 10th or 11th. So if we win the next 2 games, which we might not do, the highest position we could be is like 10th or 11th, you know? So when you look at it like that, we could easily lose to Brighton. I would be stunned if we lost to Southampton, but at the same time, nothing ever surprises with Manchester United anymore. You know, if we're sat here at 10 o'clock tonight and we've lost to Southampton, obviously I'd be annoyed, but I wouldn't be... it's not beyond the realm of possibility, is it? You know? I mean, it should be. They've only won 1 game this season and they've got minus 32 goal difference. They've only scored 12 goals all season in 20 games, so it would be an absolute disgrace if we lost tonight. But you never know. What's everyone's score predictions for the game tonight, by the way? Let me know in the comment section. I mean, it's got to be like a 3 or 4-0 for me. We've got to go out there and go all out attacking and blow them away in the first half. You know, 3 or 4-0 in the first half. They're absolutely awful, Southampton. They're going straight back down to the Championship. So, yeah. Sean says, do you think Onana will start in goal tonight? I don't know. I think it probably will be Onana, to be honest. But again, it's hard to predict. Very hard to predict. You know, a couple of weeks ago, people, including myself, were saying Bayindir should be sold. He's awful. Get rid of him. And then he has one good performance against Arsenal. For the first 60 minutes against Arsenal, he was quite poor. And then after the penalty onwards, he was world class. So there clearly is a good player there in Bayindir. Maybe it's just a confidence thing. I don't know. But it would be quite crazy if we just dropped Onana and Bayindir started. Maybe Ruben Amorim will do it. And if he does, I'll back him because I think, you know, Bayindir deserves to start. But I still have a feeling that Onana will play tonight. And I have a feeling that Bayindir will end up being like the FA Cup, Europa League, maybe goalkeeper, which I'd have no problem with. I think that would make sense. You know, a lot of teams do that. I know Pep Guardiola used to do that with City. He'd have Ortega as the cup competition goalkeeper, and then he'd have Edison as the Premier League and Champions League goalkeeper. So we'll see how that one progresses. But right, let's go back to the transfer related news quickly. Before we do that though, everyone who's just joined the video, if you could do me a little favour and drop a like, that would be really, really appreciated. We're trying to get to 500 likes before the end of this video, so go and do that right now. And make sure to subscribe as well. We are on the road to 50,000 subscribers. We're going to try and hit that hopefully in the next couple of months. So go and subscribe now. Tell your friends to subscribe. Get involved in the channel. Right. Let's move on to the story about Garnacho then, shall we? So this story broke last night. It's mainly coming out from Italian sources, but the general headline is that apparently... Let me just get the story up for you here. Where is it? It was here a minute ago. It's disappeared. The general gist of it is this, that apparently Garnacho's agent has been meeting with Napoli to discuss a potential deal, obviously, to Naples. Now, the story says that Alejandro Garnacho is a dream signing for Napoli. They really appreciate him internally and believe he is perfect for them. Garnacho is also the dream signing for Antonio Conte, who is in love with the player. Napoli are being realistic. They know that Manchester United want big money, not 40 million euros. The transfer depends on Napoli's budget and if they want to invest big money. This is coming out from Fabrizio Romano. So this is tier one source saying that Napoli really want to sign Garnacho. Conte loves Garnacho. And there are more stories coming out this morning as well saying that apparently Garnacho's agent has now met with Napoli. There's pictures of them together. I think it was, I can't remember where it was, but I saw pictures of Garnacho's agent and the president of Napoli. And apparently Garnacho has agreed personal terms with Napoli now. He's said yes to the move. But the same in any transfer is kind of irrelevant. Until Manchester United agree a fee with Napoli, he's not going anywhere. Now, I've seen a lot of people arguing about this on social media. I've seen a lot of people saying it's a disgrace. I actually disagree, to be honest. I think the way I see it is this, right? This is how football is these days. It's a disgrace that PSR means that Manchester United, Chelsea, Liverpool, Aston Villa, Newcastle have to sell their better young players that have come through the youth academy in order to comply with PSR. I agree with that. That's a disgrace. But to say that this is Ineos's fault or to say that this is the Glazers' fault, maybe somewhat it is. Obviously, Ineos could have cleared the debt and that would have helped our financial fair play situation. But we're in the position we are because, one, we've spent badly. That's obviously on the Glazers. Two, because of PSR, the rules have changed. And with the new PSR rules, it means that you have to effectively comply with the law. Otherwise, you get point deductions or worse, you get, money taken off you, whatever. And realistically, the only way to invest heavily in your team now is to sell youth players. People keep saying, oh, how did Chelsea spend so much money? Chelsea spent so much money because they sold loads of youth players. That was how they did it, and it's relatively simple. Like yesterday, I think Aston Villa are about to sell someone to Leicester, aren't they? Somebody I'd never even heard of. Who was it? Does anybody see that? What's the guy's name? But the point I'm making here is, there are players moving around the Premier League from other Premier League clubs, and a lot of them are players from their academies. And they'll sell a player you've never heard of from their academy for like 20, 30 million pounds. And that's how people are balancing the books now. So the point I'm making here is, right, is it a shame that Manchester United are having to consider selling youth players? Yes, of course it is. But at the same time, we're an underperforming side. We finished 8th last season in the Premier League and we're 15th in the Premier League now. Remember that Garnacho was the starting star player under Erik ten Hag. Erik ten Hag got sacked when Garnacho was in the team. It's not like Garnacho was scoring hat-tricks every week and we were sat top of the table. That doesn't mean I don't like Garnacho. I'm just saying that there's this problem we have in the fan base where we put these players on this pedestal, right? People are like, oh, Garnacho's world class. He's world class. He's not world class. Come on, be serious. He's not a Vinicius Junior. He's not a... I wouldn't even say he's probably on the level of like... I don't know. Would you say he's on the level of Inaki Williams? I don't know. It's a hard one. And I think, if we can get this £60 million that's being quoted in the media this morning, I think you have to take it. The player I was talking about was Jadon Philogene. He's a left winger. I think he's played like 1 or 2 times for Aston Villa and he's going to Ipswich for like £25 million. Again, a youth player, and this is just how football is now. These teams are having to sell their youth players. Oh, he has already joined Ipswich. He joined Ipswich for... The fee hasn't been confirmed yet. But before this, he's only played like 300 Premier League minutes, this Aston Villa youth player. And he's now just joined Ipswich for like over £20 million, And that's just how football is now. That's how the teams have to balance their books. And whether you're Newcastle, who have the richest owners in the world, they still can't spend money because of PSR. Now, obviously, as I said, if Ineos and the Glazers had cleared the debt, I think it does make our PSR situation a bit better, because obviously at the moment, whilst we have this debt, we have to pay interest on the debt, which obviously affects our affordability, our spending in PSR rules. So that is their fault. But generally, the way the rules are made now, the only way clubs can raise money is by selling youth players. And at the moment, what youth players do we have that people are going to want to buy? Tell me. There is literally next to none. The only people we have are Garnacho and Kobbie Mainoo. So the same people in the fan base who are sat there saying, oh, it's a disgrace that we're selling Garnacho, it's a disgrace that we'd even consider it, are the same people who are saying it's a disgrace that we're not spending 100 million in the January window. I mean, how do you expect to spend 100 million if you don't have the money to spend it, if PSR doesn't allow you to spend it? That's the question. And the simple answer is, unfortunately, it's just how the rules have been made. If you sell a youth player like Garnacho for £60 million straight profit, that will then open the doors to us to probably be able to sign like 5, 6, 7, 8 players with that money, because of how the PSR, the amortization rules work. It's stupid, but the only way to get around it is by selling youth players. So I'm I would say I'm open to it when I look at it like that. If it's the only way that we can properly invest in Ruben Amorim as a manager, then so be it. Yes, people can say, oh, Ineos should clear the debt, blah, 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 but they're not going to do that. You know, it's pointless getting frustrated and blaming Ineos when they're not going to clear the debt. You know, we know that Ineos were the wrong owners to buy the club. We know that at the moment it looks like they're sending us backwards. We know that most of the decision they've made have been poor. But to now just say, oh well, what, like, do you know what I mean? Like we just have to do something. But in relation to the Napoli story, the general consensus is that apparently Napoli want to pay around 40 million, which I think is a joke. I wouldn't take 40 million for him. Man United want closer to 60. Maybe there's some sort of wriggle room there. Obviously, Kvaratskhelia is leaving Napoli. He's going to move to PSG for a fee of around 70 million euros. I think if Man United could get 60 million euros plus add-ons, I think that would be acceptable. Maybe some sort of buyback clause, maybe some sort of, sell-on clause. I don't think it's the worst deal to do in the world. And if it then allows us to go and buy the players we need, a centre-back, a left wing-back, a striker, a central midfielder, then I think you have to consider it, because obviously how it works in relation to financial fair play is this. Let me try and simplify it to you as to why this is so important. So say we sell Garnacho for 60 million, right? That 60 million will go down as straight profit on our PSR for this calendar year. And then what Manchester United would be able to do is, from our perspective, in relation to outgoings, money leaving the Manchester United bank account, transfer fees are spread across the length of the contract. So say you buy a player for £50 million on a 5-year contract. In relation to PSR, that would then be £10 million per year for 5 years. Does that make sense? So if you sold Garnacho for £60 million, let me do you a really simple example here. If you sold Garnacho for £60 million, you could then effectively go and buy, let me make sure I get this right. You could buy 6 £50 million players in the same year using that money. And you'd still be complying with PSR. Because what you've then done is you've taken the 60 million, right? You buy 6 players, and each one of those players will cost you 10 million per year. Does that make sense? It's a little bit confusing to get your head around, but once you get your head around it, it makes a lot of sense. So that's why Manchester United are considering doing this, because they could literally go and spend, what did I just say? They could go and spend like £300 million if they did this, because of how the PSR rules work. That's how teams like Chelsea spent like £1 billion in one window, because they used the money they got as straight profit and then spread the contracts out over like a 10-year period. So say they bought Enzo Fernandez for 100 million. In their PSR books, they're only actually paying £10 million a year for him, That's how they've done it. And it's very clever, but the negative side of this is obviously the only way to get around it is by selling youth players. So when I break it down like this, I think, you have to consider it. Because if someone said to me, you could keep Garnacho, or you could go and buy 6 £50 million players, I mean, what would you do? You could go and get Nuno Mendes. You could go and get Edison from Atalanta. You could go and get Gyökeres. You could go and get... who else could you get? What have we got there? We've got a midfielder. We've got a left wing back. You could go and get a centre back, Gonzalo Inacio. Like, do you see what I'm saying here? You could completely transform the team, and the only sacrifice you would have to make would be by selling Garnacho. That's how it works. I agree 100% that how PSR works is a disgrace, and I think the fact that they're pushing teams, the only way that teams can invest heavily is by selling youth players. I think that's bad. I think it's wrong. But I think in this example, like, it's the only way that we're going to get around it, It's the only way. Nobody else in our squad is going to be profit. The only other player is Mbeumo. So, yeah. And I think as well, if you just look at it fundamentally, right? Forget all of what I've just said. And you just look at it on the surface. We're sat 15th in the Premier League and someone's willing to pay us hopefully £60 million for a player who's not even barely playing. I think you have to consider it. But, yeah. And just to be very, very clear, I don't agree with how the PSR model works. I think it is flawed. I think the fact that they're making teams sell their youth players is wrong. But at the same time, we are where we are. Those are the rules, and you have to comply with them. And the only way to spend is by selling youth players. That's it. Because even in the summer, right? Even in the summer, we didn't spend that much money. We actually didn't. If you go and look at how much we spent in the summer, and you look at who the players were we sold, a lot of people seem to forget about this. Go and look at our summer spending, right? Let's get it up for you really, really quickly before I end the video. Okay? We spent about £200 million, right? But obviously, as I said, all of those players will be on like 5-year contracts. So this calendar year, this is a good way of explaining it because I think it is quite a confusing topic to get around. So in the summer, we spent £200 million, okay? That's the headline. But that £200 million was all spent on players on 5-year contracts. So in relation to PSR, we will be spending £40 million a year for the next 5 years on those players. Does that make sense? Taking it to a total of £200 million, right? But then you look at who left the club this summer, okay? So in relation to outgoings, we sold McTominay and Greenwood for over £50 million, and that was 100% profit. So this calendar year, we will have actually made more money in a PSR form in relation to transfers than we spent, because we actually only spent £40 million this year. We'll spend £40 million next year on these same players. So Lenny Yoro, Ugarte, De Ligt, Xerxes, Mazraoui. Those 5 players will cost us £40 million this year. Next year, they'll cost us £40 million. The third year, £40 million. Fourth year, £40 million. Fifth year, £40 million, right? Does that make sense? So in relation to PSR. But then in that same transfer window, we sold McTominay and we sold Greenwood, who were both youth players, 100% profit, and we sold them for more than £40 million combined, closer to 50 million. So in relation to PSR, our net spend of the summer for this calendar year, right, will be less than what will have made money. So that's how it works. And that's why we're having to sell youth players, But obviously, the headline will always be, oh, United have spent £1 billion, United have spent this, United have spent that. But I said in the summer, Ineos didn't really actually invest that much money in this team, I don't think. When you actually look at what we needed and what we got, like Mazraoui has been a good signing, but he was a cheap option. They wanted Branthwaite, but they went for De Ligt. I'm not complaining about that. I like De Ligt, but I'm just saying a lot of the players we signed in the summer weren't the number one options, were they? We went for some cheaper options and we managed to get quite a lot of players off the wage bill. So I hope that's kind of explained how it all works, but it is obviously a little bit confusing. We've got over 500 people watching live now, which is absolutely lovely. If you could do me a little favour and like the video, that would be appreciated. Let's try and get to 500 likes before the end. And then the final story before I go, because I have got to go in a minute, is about Bryan Mbeumo. Apparently Manchester United want to sign Mbeumo in the summer. Obviously, he's had an absolutely phenomenal season so far for Brentford. A player I like, 25 years of age, meets the age profile. He has got 13 goals and 3 assists in the Premier League already this season, which is absolutely phenomenal. There are a lot of teams interested in Bryan Mbeumo, though. Newcastle, Tottenham, Arsenal and Manchester United. Do I think we'll get him? Possibly. I think it probably depends where we finish in the table. You know, if we get European football, how much money we're willing to pay him and all the rest of it. But I think he is an interesting option. So yeah, we'll talk about that on another show. I'm going to end the video here, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe. This has been Daily Red Devil. Thank you very much.